Karl McKaigue, Derry footballer, is with us on the line. Karl, you're welcome back to the show. How are you getting on?
Not too bad. Good morning, lads.
In terms of hype, we've just been chatting about maybe a bit of a muted build-up, certainly from the camps when it comes to Kerry and Dublin. I presume the hype has gone to a whole other level post the Clare game in Derry.
Oh, definitely. You know, anywhere you drive through in Derry at the minute, you see the red and white button everywhere. You see kids run about with their Derry tops on. I know I've just read a lot of things on Twitter about this whole sort of, low-key build-up to the Ireland semi-finals. It certainly doesn't feel that way up here, but I sort of get the lads' point too, that the media side of things has maybe been shut down a wee bit. But up in Derry here, we're very much looking forward to it, and everyone's very excited.
I found that Derry have been really open this year. Even just chatting to your brother in the aftermath of the Ulster final, just there's real honesty from some of the stuff he says. The same kind of goes for Rory Gallagher. He is the inter-county manager that's been most visible this week when it comes to quotes, Rory Gallagher. That there doesn't seem to be this paranoia yet anyway in Derry.
No, definitely not. And to be fair to Rory, he's saying things in interviews that he would say within the team meetings. He's been completely upfront. I think that just comes from a big confidence he has in his playing group. So he's not afraid to go out there and maybe put a wee bit of extra bit of pressure on his players by calling it as he sees it.
You were pretty bullish with us on the show last time you were on before the Clare game. You were right to be so because they absolutely hammered them. Was there anything about that performance at all that surprised you, or did you see anything new that day?
No, not really. I didn't think Derry maybe would have went as offensive in terms of pressing the kick out with, nearly every man forward. But at the same time, I expected it to be a comfortable enough one. Did I expect it to be 5 goals? No, but I did think maybe 2 or 3. Overall wasn't surprised by it, and I think Derry actually have a wee bit more in them. Even, they scored 5 goals.
So that offensive press wasn't something that we saw in the Ulster Championship. This was a new development when they came up against Clare.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I definitely. And I think, Rory obviously planned before the game. He's seen that there's probably an area that you could be targeted with Clare. With Donegal, obviously, with Sean Patton and nets, you can get caught over the top with that aggressive press. So he probably studied the Clare defence and goalkeeper and thought there's a chance to really go to town and maybe get a bit of early pressure on.
It seems that they've kind of gone into that situation of being Ulster champions and wearing that crown pretty lightly then. It wasn't anything that bogged them down. It was like, right, we've got our tails up here. We are the best in Ulster coming into to a team against a Munster team, and just feeling that confidence and feeling that kind of good sense of arrogance that they can go and kill them. Like that's what it says to me about that tactical approach in the quarter-final.
Definitely, and Rory has everybody at the minute completely backing themselves, so there's ultimate confidence in what they were doing for that game. Yes, it was probably leaving a wee bit more space at the back than they have maybe against Donegal or Monaghan or Tyrone, but at the same time they went in for the kill. The press led to a few goals, and that more or less killed the game very early.
Do you speak to Chrissy in weeks like this? Do you have conversations? Do you try and avoid each other, or how does that work?
Probably nothing different than usual week. I wouldn't be sort of asking what's going on in camp. I just don't think that's probably my business at the minute. But at the same time, you have a fair idea how things are going. You get good vibes from that things are going well in training, that they're well prepared, and I definitely expect them to be very competitive with Galway. I don't think it'll be much in it either way, but I think they're in a good place going into it.
Who do you think he's going to mark on Saturday?
Don't know. Shane Walsh tends to play quite far out. I don't know if that's something that would maybe suit Christopher as well. He tends to be the closest man to goal most of this year, so that leaves your pick between probably Comer and Finnerty. Both of them are playing pretty well, so regardless of who's on, things in for a tough enough day.
Could he mark Walsh? I get the point absolutely that he always marks the guy closest to goal, but does his man marking style allow him to kind of take on a player who will drop into those deep pockets and into those pockets probably closer to the sideline at times?
Probably, to be fair, he's played a lot of his under-county career in the half-back line, center half-back, even a few games in midfield, so he'll be comfortable out the pitch, be comfortable sort of close to the 21-13. So I think regardless of what job he's given, he'll be happy enough to do it.
When it comes to some of those Derry forwards, I think that the fashion in which they dismantled Clare was pretty interesting, and I guess you could touch on it there. You were a little bit surprised by the 5 goals yourself. Shane McGuigan's performance was unreal. He's been brilliant for the last couple of years for Derry ever since he's kind of broken through, and I'm not sure that people kind of appreciate just how good he was until that quarter final. I know people in Derry probably knew for a long time. So what's been your experience of him up close in training and some of the things that you've seen him do over the last, I guess, few years?
He's definitely brought his game to a different level. Shane would have broke onto our club team as a minor in 2015. I think his debut might have been the Ulster club game against Scotstown, which we lost, but he came on and scored a few points. He's a brilliant player. He's brought his physicality to a new level. He's one of the fittest and strongest players on the panel at this point in time, but the amount of work he puts in behind the scenes is unbelievable. You always see him in the gym, whether it be stretching or S&C work, hydrating well. He just takes ultimate care of his body. He just wants to be a top-level inter-county footballer. At the minute, he's without doubt Derry's best forward and probably one of the best forwards in the country, but still that won't be enough for him. He'll want to kick on to that next level, probably up to where Con O'Callaghan and David Clifford are. And I think he's definitely capable of getting to that point. Is
that something that a player like him thinks about and talks about and kind of has that level in his head where those names get mentioned, where he can say to himself, I want to be as good as a Clifford or as an O'Callaghan?
He probably wouldn't outwardly say it, but just from his self-confidence and how much he puts into it, he more than expects himself to get to that level. And I say you're starting to see it now. I think it was 1-8 the last game. He probably could have finished with maybe 2-12. He had a few wides he had in the first half and even a goal chance in the second half. So he's playing unbelievably well. There's more in him. Derry are going to need it on Saturday if they are to win. But I definitely expect him to have a big game.
What's your take on that then? How far is he off that level off the two lads?
I suppose it's maybe a wee bit hard to compare because Derry haven't been playing Division 1. To be fair to Kerry and Dublin, they've been doing it year in, year out, Championship and League within Division 1 as well. So, I think when he's playing at that level, you see him up against the Tyrones and the Donegals and the Dublins and Kerrys each year and Mayos, that he can actually perform against them big teams, and I think he's just waiting for that opportunity.
Have you gone up against him in training?
Oh, aye, many's the time. Definitely was a lot easier mark back around 2015-16 when he broke onto the squad. Nowadays he's a different animal. You nearly need 2 or 3 men beside you to try and keep him under wraps, but he's a nightmare to mark in training.
What can you do to stop him?
Well, probably like anything, and any big player in the inter-county game at the minute, you have to have a good defensive structure around you, and then you have to be on your game yourself. So you're never going to mark him one-on-one inside 50 yards, because once he gets the ball, his ball in the hand, you're going to concede a point or a goal. So it's more about trying to get the setup right around you, try and get the double ups, and trying to limit him just to sort of peripheral sort of positions and where he has to go back out the pitch as opposed to run at you.
You talk about his physical transformation over the last few years. That seems to have been a common enough thread under Rory Gallagher, certainly post-COVID. Can you take us back to the moment that started and the moment that became a real focus for this team, the physical aspect?
I was really honed in on, I think, whenever we lost to Armagh up in Celtic Park. Armagh were very physically developed at that point in time. You can see the work that Kieran McGuigan had done with them. Derry were definitely flagging behind in that avenue. And I suppose, being good physically is not going to guarantee winning anything, but you're definitely not going to win anything without that. So I think, to get to that next point in time, there had to been a serious amount of work done. You're talking about committing to S&C probably 3-4 times a week over the space of maybe 18 months to really bridge that gap. And to be fair to Derry and Peter Hughes, the S&C coach, they've done that. They've bridged that gap now. And I think that gives them a chance then to use their football to try and get to that very top level.
That Derry Armagh match, am I right to say that's the game in 2020 where you lose by 2 points?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily you were getting blown out of the water. You'd kind of come up against a team that had, I guess, just got promoted to Division 1, and there was a slight enough margin, but it feels that the improvement has been not slight, it's been a significant improvement as a result of that S&C programme.
Definitely, and to be fair, from a football point of view as well, Derry have went to the next level. That night I thought 2 points might have been a wee bit flattering to Derry. I thought Armagh were probably the better team for the vast majority of that game. And Rory would say it himself, he wasn't happy about how that performance was. He didn't even expect maybe to win. I think he said that's the first time with any team he ever said that. So there has been untold improvements both in physicality and football ability over that sort of time frame from 2020. And that's there to be seen now because Derry aren't only just competing with teams, they're actually beating them.
So what specifically changed then? What was different about the programme that was brought in after 2020?
With regards to the S&C?
Yeah,
so I suppose it's, just maybe your 2 times a week that you were doing maybe unsupervised. Until then, when Peter came in, there was a lot of collective sessions. If you want to do even more sessions at your own home gym or club gym, Peter could facilitate that. 2 or 3 years could go up to the one gym and he'll take you for an extra session. So probably you're talking about 4, sometimes 5 sessions per week of S&C over that period of time. So obviously that's going to make a huge change to your body.
Yeah, for sure. When did you start seeing the results of it?
it probably just wasn't immediate. It's not only about trying to bulk up and get a wee bit of size on. It's your fitness scores is what you can perform in the power test. And Peter's very diligent with all that. He has all the proper gadgets in to measure that, and you could just see over a period of time the numbers were going up. Lads were taking confidence from it, and ultimately then I think that feeds into your playing performance, because if you're confident in your body, you'll start being able to do more on the pitch with your skills.
And it feels like it's almost been not a happy coincidence. It's actually probably been meticulously planned out. It feels that it fits in perfectly with the Rory Gallagher style of play and this Derry identity, that even earlier in the year when I was watching some of your league games, like the counter-attacking pace was blistering, and you were just thinking, God, when this actually gets to the summer, Derry could be unstoppable. Like, that was a very optimistic point of view, but it certainly has manifested that way, and that style of play wouldn't be possible if that hard work in the gym wasn't done over the last couple of winters.
Definitely not. And I suppose you still have to have the raw athleticism of players there, like likes of Gareth McKinless and Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers. These lads are unbelievable athletes in the very top percentile in the country, capable of doing it with any other player. So you have to have that sort of raw player to work with. But I say the fact that Peter's put so much work into them, and obviously Rory with the coaching, it's all sort of coming together at the right time, and they're definitely very well suited to the firm sod of Croke Park.
Can I ask you about another specific forward for Derry? I kind of got to mention Benny Heron. I mean, the Benny Heron, the GOAT page on Twitter has garnered a lot of attention. Jay from the In-Betweeners sending a good look Benny cameo during the week. 230,000 views and counting on Twitter at the moment. I mean, you're surely not going to disagree with that he is the greatest of all time, Karl?
No, definitely not. To be fair to Benny, he's been about a long time. He keeps plugging away year after year. He's been an unbelievable servant to his club Ballinascreen. But to be fair, this year he's found a new level. I think that's probably just the extra work that Rory has maybe brought onto him. What Benny will offer the team is complete, unselfish play. You see him the first man sprinting back to offer up that first line of their defence. But at the same time now, he's getting them chances for goal. He's panning them nearly every single time. He's been remarkable this year. He has to be probably in a run for an All-Star at this point. And to be fair, it's good to see for Benny, because he's a huge work ethic. He puts a lot of work into his game, and now at the age of maybe 31, he's only getting his reward. So fair play to him.
Does he know that this page exists?
Oh, I'm sure he's been made well aware of it. I don't know actually who's run the page. It's sort of an idea. It's maybe some of the young lads from his club in Ballinascreen. But I'm sure he's aware, but just wants to play it down.
One other question I had is, how are you getting on this year, Karl? There's no chance that if Derry make an All-Ireland final, you'll be back in training or anything, is there?
No chance at all, unfortunately, no.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't be on with us this morning if there was even half a chance, I suspect.
No, not a chance.
What's going to happen tomorrow?
I fancy probably a similar game to the Ulster final against Donegal. I don't think it's going to be just as aggressive as it was against Clare. It'll be cagey build-ups on both sides. I think, I probably in my head would have preferred Armagh to get through that game against Galway, because I think Armagh's style of play would probably suit there a wee bit more. They're more open, they tend to kick a bit, and that gives you more chances to counter. Galway probably play quite similar to Derry in many ways. They're more measured. They'll go through the hands quite a bit. So I think this could be a wee bit cagey and a wee bit of a stalemate at times, but I still think there'll be a lot of quality on show. But I think, either way, it'll be a few points in it, but I do think Derry just have enough to beat them.
Do you think that Derry are going to devise a game plan to test the Galway keeper under their high ball? It feels like a very obvious thing to take from the Armagh game, but it also feels it would be a bit of a movement away from the Rory Gallagher style. So it's a tricky one.
That is a tricky one, and if you lump the first 2 or 3 balls and you don't get anything out of it, you think, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to cough up possession in a very important game. And to be fair, I don't think the Galway sort of full backline defence is as bad under the high ball as it showed probably in that Armagh game. I think that was a wee bit of a freak, to be fair to them. So, if they're able to start aimlessly landing balls into the square, I don't think it would really help them. Maybe once in each half would be plenty, and if you get anything out of it, you do, and if you don't, you don't. But I certainly wouldn't be changing Derry's style of play to try and go for that wee error in the Galway defence. It's
the second Galway game now where it's really, really hard to call for sure who is going to win it. Are you predicting that Derry will win tomorrow?
I think by a few points. I fancy Galway. I said to some of my friends back home that I fancy Galway maybe by 5 or 6 against Armagh, and for a long time that was looking right. And I think, to be fair, they were probably about a 5 or 6 better team. Them freak goals wasn't really a fair reflection of how well Galway played for long parts of that game. So tomorrow I think it's going to be really tight. I think it might even take extra time to separate the two sides, but I do think Derry just have enough to get in the right side of it.
Is Chrissy taking a penalty if it goes there?
I would very much doubt that. Aye.
Probably have enough in the forwards. The other game, Carl, I just want to get your take quickly on it. Who would Derry rather play in the final if they got there?
Pick your poison. It's hard to know. I think, I suppose a lot depends on whether Con O'Callaghan's playing and what sort of shape he is and if he is playing. But I do fancy Kerry to get through that game. Stayed for the Cork and Dublin game after the Derry game there a few weeks ago, and I wasn't really impressed by how Dublin were defending. They were leaving Hurley and Sherlock 2-on-2 inside about 60 yards of space, and Cork kicked every ball in. A lot of them were sticking, some of them were going over the bar. If they had took some more chances, Cork actually could have been going into half-time leading. And if they do that against Kerry with Clifford and Guinea and Paddy Clifford as well, I think they could leave themselves open for a big concession. So unless Dublin maybe change things a wee bit at the back and they get O'Callaghan back into the mix, I think Kerry will probably edge that game.
Right, okay. So, what would you do if you could make a change to that Dublin defence then to shore things up?
I think you just have to try and generate a +1 from somewhere. You can't leave 50 yards in front of some of the best forwards in the country. If you do it even against average forwards, they're still probably going to get a fair few points off you. So if you're doing it against Kerry, it's not going to work. And we've seen how Kerry transition this year. They do kick if it's on. And if Dublin want to leave that space in Croke Park, Kerry will more than happy kick it in. And I think that could be the one of the game for them. But I don't expect Dublin just to be as sort of nonchalant in defence. I think they'll probably try and get, I don't know, whether it be Cooper or somebody back into the hole to plug that space in front of Clifford. But if they do that, then I think it should be very tight. And again, it might swing on whether Con O'Callaghan's playing or not.
Okay. If he is playing, is that Dublin to win?
He certainly probably does edge it that way. He's a massively important player for them. I think a lot was made in the last game against Cork that they couldn't really create any goal chances. If Con's in, they looked like scoring goals every single game. So he's a very important player for them. He's obviously probably top 2 players in the country, so they need him playing and need him fit.
Karl, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for being with us.
No problem at all.